Good evening, everyone, and welcome back to The Place to Race, Simsport Racing. Alex Goldschmidt and Steve Proudley back with you once again. Good evening, Steve. How are you, mate? You keeping well?
I'm keeping very well, thank you, Alex, and it's good to be back with you, buddy, in the commentary box for round one of the GT4s here tonight at Monza. I think we're in for a barnstorming stonker of a race, as we have, I believe 38 cars on the grid tonight.
Yep, representing 8 different brands. Firstly, I need to give a big shout out to Chris Buxton, who stood in for me for the Season 3 GT3 season finale at Paul Ricard in the tail end of October. But yeah, 6 different venues over the next 6 weeks as we have 38 cars. It's due to be 39, as good evening, Dave Hedges, once again. Evening, Burton Ernie, as he said on YouTube. You can't get round it, You can't get round it, Dave. You can't get round it. You're always rumbled, a bit like Aaron and Amy. When someone thinks that Aaron Walker is multitasking whilst he's driving. But yeah, we've got some fantastic circuits. We're going to have a slightly revised format. Of course, the first round, there will be a 10-minute qualification session, which will be getting underway in just over half a minute's time. We then have a 45-minute session per race. And then we're not having a reverse grid. We're having a top 15 reverse grid. And we'd like to welcome everyone that is watching at the moment. We've got some fast drivers. We've got some people through the now further expanded Simsport Racing community, Steve. And we've got some really good pedallers here this evening, haven't we?
We have, and as I always say, and the boys always do, they put lots and lots of practice in, lots of effort into getting those lap times down. And boy, as we just saw before we went live there in the practice session, the top 23 cars were all within 2 seconds of each other. And, you know, Adam Azalovic was leading the way with the only man to get into the 55s, but everybody, nobody was far behind him, were they? It was a very, very close.
Yeah, very, very true. And it looks like qualifying is getting underway here at Autodromo Nazionale di Monza. 3.6 miles, 5.793 kilometres, 38 drivers. And you know what's funny here, Steve? I did some calculations, even with Dave Hedges, who's not with us this evening. We'll see him back for round 2. Porsche have over 38% representation in this grid. We have, I think I count probably about 3 times the amount of teams that we had last time out. So both the Drivers' Championship and also the Teams' Championship for Season 3 in GT4 is going to be even more explosive than we saw last season. We've got the 2 guys that have actually been the inaugural first 2 season champions, Aaron Walker in Season 1 and Steve Haley in Season 2, and Steve is running the number 1. But the biggest surprise is that they've decided to go for the KTM crossbow. That's an interesting move here, isn't it?
Yeah, absolutely. The guys are just hitting the track now. But yeah, definitely, as we're just looking at Walker there in the crossbow, it is a quick car, but for the circuits that are coming up in this GT4 Championship, it's possibly one of the harder cars to get the results from, because we're looking at some real straight line speed circuits, and that's hence why a lot of the guys have chosen, shall we say, the quicker, more top speed advantaged cars like the Porsche, like the Mercedes, like the BMWs that are out there. But there are a few guys, there's a couple in the Ginettas, you know, we've got a Renault Alpine as well on the grid, so you know, there are some other manufacturers out there as well, and we've even got 1 Maserati this evening, but when Dave returns next week we'll have 2 Maseratis on the grid as well, subject to the weather obviously. If it's raining they probably won't want to go out, but
well, we know that Regan Mitchell, who's back in the Maserati after being the sole driver to do so in the first season, very different livery for the team known as Investigation Team. We've got more teams in. We've got Black Mamba, Roof Peg Brewing, Dunn Motorsport, Simbro Sport, Midlands Triple R, Apex Racing, HF Impala, runners-up in last season's Teams Championship. They've now switched to Porsche as the drivers making their way through the Rettifilio.
Yeah, absolutely. It's going to really, you know, the Teams Championship, it's a different challenge for the drivers, because, you know, you've got to have 2 drivers that potentially are team players and not just out for their own victory, as Aaron Walker and Steve Haley demonstrated last season, you know, with the Team Championship, and Tim Fulbrook and Michael Haffenden. You know, they played the team game all the way through the season. So it definitely puts a new challenge in there for drivers, and it's great to see, that we have got that team's championship growing as well as the actual field. For 38 cars, well, 39 sign-ups, but 38 cars tonight, it's absolutely awesome.
Yeah, and we've got the ACC GT3 drivers swap starting this coming Sunday, 150 minutes per race. And thank you for that, Ben Holmes. Good evening. Just an FYI, you've got folks waiting on the stream to start on one of the other pages. Not too sure what's going on there, but we'll hopefully get that rectified. Good evening, Dave Jones. 6.5 minutes still to go. There is Andrew Ambro in the number 13 Black Mamba Racing BMW M4 GT4. And with the circuits that we've got here in Season 3, we've got Monza this week, Suzuka next week, frog in the throat, sorry, Nurburgring, round 3, Silverstone, Spa-Francorchamps, and Brands Hatch. And if I'm honest, talking about the KTMs, Charlie Crossland used that